Hello, my name is Dan Schneider. Our urban community welcomes all with love, supports learning and spiritual growth, serves our wider community, and works for justice, equity, and inclusion. We're glad you're with us this morning. If you'd like more information about our First Unitarian Church community or its work, please email us at member-care@firstuu.com. There are a few announcements I'd like to share with you this morning. Our winter congregational meeting will happen on Zoom on Sunday, January 31st, 2021 at 11 a.m. An email was sent to all members with details explaining how to register for this meeting. Please note that you must be registered in order to vote at the meeting. For more information, please contact our administrator, Katya Dodd. Our exploration of widening the circle of concern, the report of the Unitarian Universalist Association Commission on Institutional Change, continues with a service next week and a discussion on January 20th on hospitality and inclusion. If you would like a copy of the report or information on how to join the discussion, please contact Reverend Connie or email member-care@firstuu.com.
Hey, First Church, can you? If so, then sign up for because right now we all need a little more and a little less. So what are you waiting for?
For our chalice lighting this morning, I have a reading from Widening the Circle of Concern, the report of the Unitarian Universalist Commission on Institutional Change. This reading is from the section on living our values in the world. Our internal work as people of faith is to become more inclusive, equitable, and diverse, while our external work is to be accountable to those most affected by injustice. For us to be good, accountable partners, we must do both. Truly just and long-term justice work cannot be based in a charitable model that assumes that people of privilege have more knowledge of what is needed than those who have faced limited economic and social opportunities because of discrimination within organizations, communities, and systems.
Fair is fair, by Jennifer Dusling. Illustrated by Diane Palmasiano. But Dad, Marco whined. No, Marco, Mr. Solano said firmly. Your allowance is fair. Marco sighed. The other kids in his class had bigger allowances. Marco got $3 a week. Everyone else got at least $5. It wasn't fair, no matter what his dad said. Mr. Solano was off to his job at the Pet Party Pet Food Company. I'll be back at 7, he said. He rumpled Marco's hair on his way out. I'm sorry, hun, Marco's mom said. Your dad is just busy at work. He's trying to get a big account. She grabbed her keys. Business is the only thing that gets his attention right now. Marco's mom was joking, but her joke gave Marco an idea. When Mr. Solano came home, Marco was walking back and forth in front of the TV. He was carrying a sign that said, "Keep your kid happy. Raise his allowance." The only thing Mr. Solano raised was his eyebrows. The next day, Marco left little sticky notes all over the house. They said, "Don't forget, raise Marco's allowance." His dad didn't take the hints. Early Saturday morning, Marco wrote a note on his dad's calendar. 10 a.m. Meet with Marco about money. Mr. Solano laughed and took Marco to the zoo instead. The zoo was fun, but it wasn't what Marco really wanted. He kept thinking about his allowance. How could he get his dad to take him seriously? In school on Monday, Marco learned about bar graphs. Graphs are a great way to make a point, his teacher said. That's it, Marco said to himself. At lunch, Marco asked some kids in his class about their allowances. He took notes. When he got home, he spread out a big piece of grid paper on his bedroom floor. First, Marco wrote the numbers 0 to 10 on the left side of the grid. 1 square stood for each dollar a kid got. Next, he wrote a kid's name at the bottom of each column. Then, he started coloring. When Marco was finished, Sam, Maria, and Nathan had tall towers of squares above their names. Anne had a skyscraper. Marco's column was barely a house. Marco's bar graph got Mr. Solano's attention. He looked at it carefully. This is interesting, he said. But I still think $3 is fair. Mr. Solano didn't sound quite as sure as he had before. Marco knew he was onto something with the bar graphs. The next day, Marco did another survey of his classmates. He asked them how many chores they had. Sam and Nathan had 2 chores to do. Anne had 3. Maria didn't have any chores at all. And Marco had 5 chores. He had to sweep the floor, feed the dog, set the table, take out the trash, and make his bed. This time, Marco had the tower. Everyone else had houses. Mr. Solano spent a whole 10 minutes looking at Marco's new bar graph. He scratched his chin. He mumbled to himself, yes, no. He walked away without saying anything. Mr. Solano went into his office. He didn't come out again all night. Marco couldn't tell if that was good or bad. He decided to act like it was good. But it wasn't good. It was great. The next day, Marco's dad came home early. He swept Marco right off the floor, gave him a big bear hug, and said, "Thank you, Marco." "I had a big meeting today," Marco's dad explained. "I wanted to win this new account, and your bar graphs gave me an idea. Last night, I made my own bar graphs, and Garden Grocery picked Pet Party Pet Food over 4 other companies." Marco's dad took out the bar graphs he had made. One showed a pet food taste test between Pet Party and 4 other brands. The dogs liked Mr. Solano's pet food best. Another showed which pet food veterinarians preferred. Pet Party was their favorite too. Marco gave his dad a big hug. He was glad his dad was happy. "Get your mom," Marco's dad said. "We're going out to dinner to celebrate." Marco, his dad, and his mom all piled into the family car. They went to Marco's favorite restaurant, China Garden. Mr. Solano called for a toast. "Here's to Marco." His bar graphs were clear and powerful. They convinced me. I thought $3 was fair, but I was wrong. So Marco, I am raising your allowance. Marco was surprised, but only for a second. His bar graphs had proved his point. He was finally getting a bigger allowance. They all raised their teacups. "Cheers to Marco," his mom and dad said. "Cheers to me," Marco said. That night, Marco taped up his 2 bar graphs. He lay back in bed and looked at them. He smiled. Just a week ago, it seemed as if his dad would never change his mind. Now, he understood what Marco had been trying to show him all along. Fair is fair. In this story, Marco knew what was fair. He knew his worth, and he knew that his dad could afford to pay more. But sometimes in our world, people aren't paid what they're worth. Sometimes people aren't treated fairly. I wonder, what should people do when they're not treated fairly? Today we're going to hear from someone who has not been treated fairly. After we hear from them, I encourage you to share your thoughts with a family member or friend this week or at coffee hour after the service.
Our topic for today is Centering for Justice. Our church is designating our plate collection for January to benefit the work of the Cincinnati Interfaith Workers Center, or CIWC. And the work of the CIWC demonstrates every day the benefits of centering the experiences of people who are directly affected by injustice. The Cincinnati Interfaith Workers Center mobilizes, educates, and organizes low-wage and immigrant workers to achieve positive systemic change. The CIWC brings to the center the experiences of those most affected by injustice. That is something we Unitarian Universalists say we want to do. The Cincinnati Interfaith Workers Center does this all the time. That is the first reason I have become such a strong supporter. The second reason is that the CIWC gets things done. The CIWC changes policies leading to real change in people's lives. I have seen that happen. I first learned about the Cincinnati Interfaith Workers Center when I chaired our Social Justice Committee along with Don Sherman, who was the first executive director of the CIWC. Later, I participated in training on the Good Food Purchasing Program sponsored by the Unitarian Universalist College of Social Justice. That is when I met Jorge Lopez, who created the video on wage theft that we will see this morning. Jorge is the vice president of the CIWC Board of Directors. Our speakers today are Patience Fuller, a board member, and Manuel Perez, membership coordinator and organizer. What kinds of changes have happened? First, 5 years ago, Cincinnati became the first Ohio city to approve a wage theft ordinance. The ordinance says that a company doing business with the city and found to have committed wage theft could be required to return money to the city and would be prevented from doing business with the city. The CIWC Worker Justice Committee, composed primarily of established wage theft as a strategic priority in 2014. The Cincinnati Interfaith Workers Center led the movement to get this measure passed. In addition, over the last 15 years, the CIWC has recovered more than $4 million in stolen wages. Secondly, 2 years ago, the Cincinnati Public Schools adopted a good food purchasing policy. The policy follows the principle that public money that pays for food for school children should be based on public values. These values are local economies, environmental sustainability, a valued workforce, animal welfare, and good nutrition. CIWC staff and volunteers helped to form and lead a coalition of separate organizations that found common ground in the Good Food Purchasing Program and worked to get it adopted. The most exciting new CIWC initiative is Voices, a bilingual newspaper that stands up for everyone who wants fair treatment, better rights, and more power on the job and in the community. The CIWC is looking for more volunteer writers, artists, and distributors for Voices. And if you would like to help, please let me know. The goal is to obtain enough advertising revenue to be financially independent by the end of the year. Your contributions this month will help make Voices become financially independent much earlier. I contribute to the Cincinnati Interfaith Workers Center every year, and I hope you would join me in supporting the work of this great organization. To make a contribution, you can text GIVE to 513-717-7373, click Give in Breeze, visit our website at www.firstuu.com, or mail a check to First Unitarian Church of Cincinnati, 536 Linton Street, Cincinnati, Ohio, 45219. If you want your contribution to support CIWC, please be sure to write CIWC on the memo line of your check or to select January Share the Plate. We will accept contributions for CIWC through January 31st, 2021. If this is your first time visiting, please feel free to let the virtual plate pass you by. We are grateful for your presence.
afternoon, sir. Can you tell us your name and your role in CIWC?
My name is Dan Schneider, and I am a member of the board of the Cincinnati Interfaith Workers Center. I'm happy to serve in that role.
Thank you, sir. Can you tell us a little bit about what is it that CIWC does?
CIWC helps workers, especially low-income and immigrant workers, to deal with many issues they deal with. Quite often it's issues of wage theft and discrimination of various kinds. And these are unorganized workers who face lots of problems, and they have day-to-day lives that really challenge them. And Cincinnati Interfaith Workers really helps them with the wage theft. And this past year, the workers helped to spearhead a drive for an anti-wage theft ordinance that passed by very large margin in City Hall, City Council, which really, I think, has begun to help many low-income workers with the problems of wage theft, not being paid for overtime, not being paid for the work they do, working off the clock, those kinds of things. It's a real problem, and I was there to support them when it happened, when it was passed.
Good afternoon, sir. Can you tell us your name and your role in CIWC?
Sure, Lucy. My name is Brennan Grayson. I'm the director here of the Cincinnati Interfaith Workers Center.
Can you tell us a little more about wage theft? A lot of people are not familiar with what that means.
Sure, wage theft is very common. Just to give you a sense of how common it is, we estimate that over $52 million a year goes unpaid to Cincinnati area workers because of wage theft.
Hi, I'm Priya Walia. I am a third-year law student at the University of Cincinnati College of Law. In spring 2015, I worked at the Cincinnati Interfaith Workers Center to help with the first draft of the wage theft ordinance in order to protect the growing low-wage worker population we have here in Cincinnati. And since then, our ordinance has been successfully passed and is now officially an ordinance for the city of Cincinnati. The value of this type of ordinance sets us apart from other big cities in the United States and allows us to be a safe haven for workers to not be exploited.
All right, everybody, we're here in City Hall. The members of the Cincinnati Interfaith Workers Center, its religious and labor allies, brought about a huge victory for working people and wage earners in Cincinnati. Now, if you're on a city project of any kind, you are protected from wage theft. There's going to be no tolerance for any kind of wage theft based on what this movement brought to the city of Cincinnati. We are excited to share with the community what this does to help people enforce their right to be paid for every hour that they work on the job. Come down to the Workers Center, find out how this ordinance can help you get paid. Thank you very much to everyone who lent a hand and to help bring this fight and this victory to Cincinnati.
Who would you say is the most vulnerable community to experience this type of issue?
Undocumented immigrants, because they are afraid to speak up. They are afraid that somebody's going to come get them. They'll have to get deported. So I would say, to me, I'm not an expert, but to me they would seem to be the most vulnerable population. And I know some of them people very personally. I teach English as a second language to immigrants. I know some people, and they are some of the finest people I know, and I really am concerned about them.
What would you say is the best way to help educate these communities?
I think you make them aware of their rights. Regardless of how they got here, they have every right to be paid for their work, and that's the law. So they should have the full protection of the law as long as they're here and obeying the laws of our country, which most of them do every day.
When the union's inspiration to the worker not so none, there can be no power greater than anywhere beneath the sun. Yet what force on earth is weaker than the feeble strength of one? For the union makes us strong. Solidarity forever. Solidarity forever. Solidarity forever. For the union makes us strong. When we hold in common with the greedy parasite who would lash us and the serf to crush us with his might. Solidarity forever. Solidarity forever. For the union makes us strong. When the union's inspiration to the worker not so none, there can be no power greater than anywhere beneath the sun. Yet what force on earth is weaker than the feeble strength of one? For the union makes us strong.
Good morning. It's always great to be in the house of the Lord. I'm Patience Fuller, a board member of the Cincinnati Interfaith Worker Center. I've been a member since 2007. I found out about the Worker Center while working as a day laborer. At that time, you had to be at the temp agency at 4:30 to 5 o'clock a.m. to get on the ticket to get a good job. Something like a lottery, hoping you would be called. So I thank God for getting me on the ticket. As I'm counting my blessings, thankful I'm working, still there were problems. Why am I paying the agency to take me to work when I can catch the bus? Why am I paying for PPE that's needed to do the job? And why am I being paid minimum wage for a job that's contracted out by the city? Questions that wasn't being addressed. So I'm complaining every day to anyone who will listen. A coworker told me about a worker center, saying it was the next best thing to being in the union. They explained your rights as a worker. All the things they talked about, I knew about, so I wasn't convinced, but I listened. Then there was something different. I felt it. Concern, a willingness to stand up to the big corporations on behalf of the workers, not asking to be compensated. They took it on immediately. About a week later, a coworker said, "Patience, the Worker Center has a check for you for the rise in PPE that you paid for." I was impressed, so I decided to go to another meeting. I even invited a couple of coworkers, and together with the Worker Center, we came up with a plan. It wouldn't be an easy road. There was already a city ordinance, but it was not being enforced. So we took to the streets with flyers. We had members of our interfaith circle reach out to Jack Rumpke personally. It was a long overdue battle, but we prevailed. July 1st, 2009, Rumpke will pay a living wage, but not before I was fired. June 4th, 2009, I wasn't given a reason for being terminated, just DNR'd. Do not return. Can someone tell me why I'm being fired? A coworker said he heard I was eating cereal on the line. Mind you, my job is recycling trash. I don't have to tell you that didn't happen. So I returned to the Worker Center in need of help, thinking I really must have pissed someone off. What's my options? Dan introduced me to Brennan, the lawyer. He called Rumpke, but they said they had nothing to do with it. They knew nothing about it. He called the temp agency. They too knew nothing about it. So why am I out of work? Brennan wrote letters and told them the consequences of me not working. And needless to say, I got my job back. And with that action, my reaction was to give back, to be a part of something that was bigger than me. I'm a justice fighter, fighting for the workers, representing the Cincinnati Interfaith Worker Center, 15 years strong. So we're asking for donations to keep us fighting for workers' rights, immigrants' rights, health and safety. Help us fight the good fight. Thank you.
Buen día, mi nombre es Manuel Pérez, coordinador de miembros del Centro de Trabajadores. El Centro de Trabajadores de Cincinnati fue fundado en 2005 con el fin de orientar, organizar, movilizar a trabajadores de bajos salarios e inmigrantes y así, de manera eficaz y creativa, mejorar sus condiciones laborales. El Centro de Trabajadores reúne a trabajadores de sindicatos, comunidades de fe, comunidad en general, con el fin de consolidar un movimiento unido que luche por la dignidad y seguridad en el trabajo. Somos parte de las redes Interfaith Worker Justice, Alianza de Trabajadores de la Cadena de Alimentos y el Consejo Nacional de Salud y Seguridad Ocupacional, COSH. El Centro de Trabajadores tiene como objetivo principal empoderar al trabajador, a resolver sus problemas en el trabajo y a ayudarlo a alcanzar justicia. Para ello, basa su trabajo en 3 campañas: Just Pay Cincy, Safety Now for All y Dignidad del Inmigrante. En el Centro de Trabajadores sabemos la importancia de educar a los trabajadores para empoderarles. Es por ello que en todas nuestras campañas la educación es un elemento fundamental. Todos los problemas relacionados con el lugar de trabajo se canalizan a través de la campaña Just Pay Cincy. Todo trabajador que viene al Centro de Trabajadores antes de recibir un servicio recibe un entrenamiento de derecho de trabajador. Es aquí donde la mayor parte de trabajadores conoce acerca de organizarse, las regulaciones del salario, el pago de tiempo extra, no ser discriminados en el lugar de trabajo, tener un lugar sano y seguro para trabajar, licencia de enfermedad, compensación por accidentes de trabajo. Como resultado del trabajo de esta campaña, se obtuvieron una ordenanza contra el robo de salarios en Cincinnati en 2016, la aprobación y adopción del programa de compra de buenos alimentos GFPP en las escuelas públicas de Cincinnati en 2019. Aunque al inicio el centro surgió como un proyecto de trabajadores afroamericanos del día con día, la meta siempre ha sido ser una membresía multiétnica y es por ello que durante todos estos años la comunidad inmigrante se ha sentido identificada con la organización y se ha integrado a fortalecer la base de la misma. He aquí la importancia de la campaña Dignidad de Inmigrantes, porque es aquí donde a través de los entrenamientos de Conoce tus derechos como inmigrante, se empodera a saber cómo interactuar en la casa, la calle o el trabajo con agentes de la autoridad como la policía e inmigración. Además, reconocer la importancia de organizarnos y luchar contra las deportaciones que separan nuestras familias y dañan nuestra comunidad. Esta campaña, al igual que las otras 2, también han permitido al Centro de Trabajadores formar alianzas y coaliciones con otras organizaciones para avanzar las luchas y lograr cambios en beneficio de la comunidad inmigrante local. Algunos de los resultados de estas luchas son la declaración de Cincinnati como una ciudad amigable para inmigrantes, además del respaldo de la identificación comunitaria conocida como Mark ID y el cambio de la política del Departamento de Policía de Cincinnati para establecer una mejor interacción con la comunidad inmigrante. Durante muchos años se ha estado luchando para que el Departamento de Alguaciles del Condado de Hamilton no colabore con las autoridades de inmigración al detener a un inmigrante por faltas leves. Aunque no se ha logrado en su totalidad, se han visto algunos avances muy lentos, pero en la dirección indicada. Es importante mencionar que es del conocimiento de la comunidad que desde sus inicios el Centro de Trabajadores integró la salud y seguridad en el trabajo como parte de su cultura de prevención y del trabajo diario de nuestra organización, porque un lugar de trabajo sano y seguro es un derecho humano básico e irrenunciable de todo trabajador. Por lo mencionado anteriormente, surge la campaña Seguridad para Todos ahora, nuestros entrenamientos básicos de salud y seguridad, OSHA 10 para la construcción y otros han sido una introducción para cientos de trabajadores de diferentes industrias a la salud y seguridad en el trabajo. Y es aquí donde aprenden que es el empleador el responsable ante la ley de garantizar condiciones independientemente de su estatus migratorio. También nos sirve de medio para concientizar al trabajador que el trabajo que hace para ganarse la vida no debería costarle la vida como resultado de un accidente o la muerte en el trabajo. Además de conocer su derecho a trabajar en un lugar seguro, aprende de sus derechos a recibir información y entrenamientos en su propio idioma, que los riesgos en el trabajo sean eliminados o mitigados, denunciar condiciones inseguras y peligrosas sin temor a represalias, rehusarse a hacer un trabajo que ponga en riesgo su vida y que independientemente que tenga autorización o no para trabajar, tiene los mismos derechos como cualquier otro trabajador bajo las regulaciones de OSHA y bajo las leyes laborales estatales y federales. Es una realidad que cuando un empleador no ofrece condiciones seguras a sus trabajadores, el resultado puede ser un accidente o una muerte en el trabajo. Para la mayoría de trabajadores es muy difícil conocer y navegar un complejo sistema de compensación de trabajadores por accidentes en el trabajo. Es ahí donde el Centro de Trabajadores, con su campaña Seguridad para Todos ahora, es una mano amiga, una luz de esperanza o un soporte a lo largo del camino que da acompañamiento. Inicialmente, educando al trabajador cómo opera el sistema, tratando de garantizar que el trabajador tenga acceso a reunirse con un abogado experto en la materia. En la mayoría de estos casos, ayudando a sortear el obstáculo de la barrera del idioma por medio de la interpretación, asistiendo como enlaces en la comunicación con los proveedores de servicios médicos, incluyendo algunos casos la asistencia a terapias de rehabilitación. Una lucha exitosa durante los últimos años se ha reflejado en que como resultado de la alianza con muchas organizaciones en el estado de Ohio, se ha prevenido que trabajadores inmigrantes sean excluidos del derecho a la compensación por accidente en el trabajo. Hace algunos años, un grupo de trabajadores miembros de la organización recibió un entrenamiento de OSHA 10 para construcción y no se quedó con lo aprendido, sino que lo compartió, siendo uno de los primeros entrenamientos de salud y seguridad en español en la región, con ello contribuyendo a que cada año sea menos trabajadores inmigrantes latinos reflejados en las estadísticas de accidentes y muertes en el trabajo. El Centro de Trabajadores vive, la lucha sigue. Trabajadores viven, la lucha sigue.
It is our practice to honor the joys and sorrows that each of us have faced since we were last together. Today, we lift up with love all of those who continue to suffer from the ravages of the coronavirus and the economic and educational and social impacts of the disease. We lift up with love and joy those who have experienced gladness, who've had new love and new life enter into their worlds. For each of them, we are grateful, for our experiences guide our way through life and make it what it is. This week in particular, we want to lift up those who work hard every day, perhaps not for proper pay, perhaps not in the best conditions. And we do that by dropping a stone in the water first for those who are unemployed or underemployed. We drop a stone for those who face discrimination, harassment, and abuse in the workplace. We drop a stone for those who are unable to balance job commitments with the needs of their families. We drop a stone for those who have been injured on the job and feel forgotten and abandoned. We drop a stone for those who receive insufficient wages to care for their family's needs. We drop a stone for those children who must quit school in order to work. Please join me in a moment of prayer. God of forgiveness, we repent for our ignorance, our apathy, and our greed that makes us blind to the plight of so many. As one body, we share common hurts, common joys, and common labor. May we work towards a more just workplace for all people, where the rights and dignity of all workers are upheld above everyone else. May our legislators and other elected officials remember the vulnerable in the workplace and develop legislation that ensures just labor standards for all. May all owners and managers recognize the dignity of workers and uphold the standards of our faith tradition by providing living wages, benefits, and the freedom of association. May all employees feel that their dignity might be expressed and increased through their work, and may they find the courage to work for more just labor conditions. Spirit of life and love, we thank you for work. Free us so that we might dedicate our hearts and lives to a vision of life with dignity for all workers. Please join me now in a moment of silent meditation, reflection, and prayer.
Oh,
We extinguish our chalice by reading together the words that appear on your screen. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Before I read my closing words, I want to give a special thank you to Manuel Perez and Patience Fuller for being with us today. We hope you felt welcome here, and I hope you will come again. Our closing words today are from Lilla Watson, an Indigenous woman from Australia who developed this statement in cooperation with other Indigenous people. If you have come here to help me, you are wasting your time. But if you have come here because your liberation is bound up with mine, then let us work together.